Hello everyone, I welcome you all to today's paper discussion. So today we are going to discuss Open Mock Test Paper 2. Now in Open Mock Test Paper 2, the first question is, consider the following statements, and we have been given certain statements. And here it has been asked that among the above statements, x number of statements are correct, then the value of x. So we have to see all the statements and we have to look for the correct statement. Here the first statement says R3NO has a higher dipole moment as compared to R3PO. Now here if I draw the structure of R3NO and R3PO, then you can see that in R3NO there is polarity in this ON and oxygen is having higher electronegativity than nitrogen, and here also the dipole moments are in this direction. But in case of R3PO, what will happen here is that there back bonding between oxygen and phosphorus takes place. Oxygen donates its lone pair because of the presence of vacant d orbital on phosphorus, and that is why here we will find this double bond, and from this I can say this, yes, R3NO has a higher dipole moment as compared to R3PO. So this statement is correct. Second statement says CO molecule contains coordinate pi bond. Now if we look at the structure of CO, then it is something like this. There is a pair of electrons on carbon and two pair of electrons on oxygen. Now oxygen donates these electrons to carbon, and this is the coordinate pi between carbon and oxygen, and if you see we can represent this coordinate bond in this form, that we will show charge negative on carbon and positive on oxygen. So these are the formal charges. Now after that, so again this statement is also correct. Then in molecule SiH3NCS, SiNCS skeleton is linear. Now in SiH3 here silicon is tetrahedral, bond angles are around 109.28, and we have NCS. Now in NCS there is double bond between carbon and nitrogen as well as a double bond between carbon and sulfur, and if you see here that the hybridization of my carbon is sp, so this part is linear, and also because of the presence of vacant d orbital on silicon, nitrogen can donate its lone pair here, and you can see that its hybridization also becomes sp, and because of that this is linear in shape till silicon, nitrogen, carbon and sulfur. So yes, this statement is also correct. The next statement says the correct order of stability of singlet species is CS2, CCl2, CF2. Now in case of CS2, now as it is singlet, we have a vacant orbital on carbon, but here there is no possibility of back bonding. But if you see in case of CF2 and CCl2, fluorine and chlorine can donate their lone pair to carbon to complete its octet or to get stability. It minimizes the deficiency of carbon, and that is why they are stabilizing it. And if we compare CCl2 and CF2, you can see that in CCl2 carbon uses its 2p, chlorine uses its 3p, whereas in case of CF2 carbon and fluorine both uses their 2p orbitals, and the bonding between 2p is much better than 2p and 3p. So yes, the stability of CF2 singlet is higher than CCl2 singlet. Then in E statement we have the direction of back bonding in both CCl2 carbene and CCl3 minus is same with respect to carbon and chlorine. Now see, in case of CCl2, as we have talked about it here, that we have pair of electrons on one of the orbital. We have 2 chlorine atoms, and in the vacant orbital of carbon, chlorine donates its lone pair. It has 3 lone pairs. So, chlorine donates its lone pair to carbon. So, the direction of electron donation is from chlorine to carbon. Whereas in case of C minus Cl3, now carbon does not have any vacant orbital, but chlorine is having vacant d orbital. So, here this carbon donates its pair of electrons to get more stability, because it do not want this much negative charge. So, here it do back bonding by donating electrons towards chlorine. So, the direction is reversed. So, this statement is incorrect. Next statement says phosphine has lower solubility in water as compared to that of ammonia. Yes, it has lower solubility. The reason is hydrogen bonding in case of ammonia. So, yes, it is correct. The next statement says the correct decreasing order of pi bond strength is 2p pi, 2p pi, 3p pi, 2p pi, 3d pi, 3p pi, 3p pi. See, the order is almost correct, but there is a problem here, that the bonding between 2p pi, 3d pi, 2p pi and 3d pi is better than 2p pi, 3p pi, 2p pi and 3p pi. The reason is that in case of 2p pi and 3d pi, d orbitals are inclined towards the p orbitals of 2p. So, they will have greater bonding, or they have greater overlapping as compared to my 2p and 3p orbitals, and that is why this statement is incorrect. So, the number of correct statement is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So, the answer of this question is 5. Moving to next question. My next question says an acyclic non-branched organic compound C4H8. Now, the first statement says many things. First thing, it is acyclic. So, the 1 dBe of C4H8 is not because of ring, it is because of any pi bond. Second thing is it is non-branched. So, if I draw 4 carbon atoms, then we have this structure. This is a non-branched acyclic structure, and if I want to have 1 dBe, then the possibility is either double bond is on the terminal side or double bond is in between. Now, after that is incapable of showing geometrical isomerism. Now, this statement, this structure, the second structure is able to show GI, but here the question says that it is incapable of showing geometrical isomerism. It means A is not this one. It means the only possibility I am left with is this one. So, the structure of A is this. Now, after that, compound A reacts with Hg2 plus dilute H2SO4 and forms product B, which gives turbidity after 5 minutes in Lucas test. Now, we know that Hg2 plus in presence of dilute H2SO4 forms an alcohol, and that alcohol is on that position which is more substituted. We know in this case there is no possibility of rearrangement, but the OH will come on that position where the carbocation will be more stable. So, among these two positions we can easily understand that my OH will be on this carbon, that is the second carbon. Now, this is B, and yes, B is a secondary alcohol, it is a 2-degree alcohol, and that is why it is able to give turbidity in 5 minutes. Now, after that, compound B reacts with sulfur containing compound C with SNI mechanism and convert into alkyl halide. Now, we have a specific reagent, a very famous reagent, which in absence of pyridine and in presence of pyridine behaves differently. And in case when pyridine is present, it undergoes SN2 mechanism, but when pyridine is absent, then that reagent undergoes retention in configuration with SNI mechanism. So, it means I am going into that direction because we are getting alkyl chloride in this case. Let us read the other statement also. Compound C is obtained by the reaction of gas D with phosphorus pentachloride. Now this is confirmed. We know that PCl5 phosphorus pentachloride reacts with SO2 gives POCl3 plus SOCl2, that is thionyl chloride. Now this thionyl chloride reacts with alcohol with SNI mechanism and gives RCl with retention in configuration. It means we are talking about SOCl2 there. Now let's see what the question is asking. If the number of p pi d pi bonds in compound D is X. Now we have A here, we have B here, C is SOCl2, that is thionyl chloride, and my D is the compound C is obtained by the reaction of a gas D with phosphorus pentachloride. So phosphorus pentachloride reacts with SO2 and forms SOCl2. It means D is SO2. So in D, the number of p pi d pi bonds. Now the hybridization of SO2 is sp2, and in sp2 we have 1. Now if I draw the structure of SO2, you can see here that here one of the pi bond is a p pi bond, whereas the other one is a p pi d pi bonds, because 3 orbitals are used in hybridization and one orbital has this p pi bond. So the only possibility for second pi bond is p pi d pi, where oxygen uses its 2p and sulfur uses its 3d orbit. So X is 1. Maximum number of atoms in a plane of phosphorus pentachloride gaseous is Y. Now phosphorus pentachloride is trigonal bipyramidal geometry. This is something like this. Now here if you look for any angle, any position, you can see that the maximum number of atoms in a plane is 4, like this one, this one, this one and this one. So Y is 4. Then the number of chiral center or centers in compound B is Z. Now in B we can see there is only one chiral center to which OH is attached. So here I have only one chiral center. So then what is the value of X plus Y plus Z? Now X is 1, this is 4, this is 1. 1 plus 4 plus 1, it is 6. So the answer of this question is 6. Now moving on to my next question, that is question number 21. Now in question 21 we can see a compound X of molecular formula C7H6O2 is a benzene derivative. Okay. Now we can see here that the DBE of this question is we have C7H6O2. So 7 for 16 hydrogens, but here we have only 6 hydrogens. It means 10 hydrogens are less, so 10 by 2 is 5. So the DBE is 5, and we know that benzene in itself has a DBE of 4. Now after that it means there is one more DBE left apart from this benzene part. Then compound X gives positive test with both sodium metal and sodium bicarbonate. Now this is a very big hint. My compound is giving positive sodium metal test as well as sodium bicarbonate, and we know my carboxylic acids are able to do that, because alcohols can give positive sodium metal test, but they are not able to give positive bicarbonate test. If we talk about ethers, then ethers are not able to give any of the test, aldehyde none. It means here we have a possibility that it is acid. So benzene having carboxylic group above that. So this is benzoic acid. You can see the formula is C7H6O2. The formula is fitting correctly. Now after that compound X reacts with chlorine iron to form compound Y. Now if this reacts with Cl2Fe, we know chlorination will take place, and as COH is a meta directing group, so the position of chlorine to which it will be attached is meta to COH. So this is metachlorobenzoic acid. Now after that we react it with thionyl chloride followed by reaction with alkaline H2O2 to give compound Z. Now this is Y, this is X. Now this compound COOH, Cl, that is Y, reacts with SOCl2, which converts it into COCl, this is Cl, in presence of H2O2. We get COOOH. And you know the name of this compound, this is Z, and it is MCPBA, that is metachloroperbenzoic acid. So this whole information is only to get metachloroperbenzoic acid. Let's see what we are doing with this compound Z. Now here reaction 1, that we have been given a trans compound, we are reacting it with Z followed by H plus and alcohol. In reaction 2 we have a cis compound, we are reacting it with MCPBA followed by H plus and H2O forming compound Q. Now here we know that if we react my alkene with per acid, what will happen? There is formation of epoxide. So epoxide formation will take place here, for example in reaction 1. What we have is a trans compound, and this is reacting with MCPBA forming an epoxide, and the stereochemistry will be retained. It means this is something like this. And after that in reaction 2 we have a cis compound, and again I am treating it with MCPBA, and here again the stereochemistry is retained. So we have something like this here. Now these compounds are reacted with, first one is reacted with H plus and methanol, and this one is reacted with H plus and water. Now first one is trans, and trans we know that reaction with per acid followed by reaction with H plus and H2 or H plus or any alcohol, what will happen? That we get anti-addition product. Now in anti-addition product we know that if we have a cis isomer and we are doing anti-addition, we get a racemic mixture. You can see here in reaction 2 we have a cis compound, we are doing anti-addition because now water will attack from this side on this compound and we get anti-addition product. And we get a racemic mixture in this case, it means the compound and its mirror image. Similarly in first case also we have a trans isomer, and trans on getting anti-addition forms meso-like structures. Now here it is meso-like, it is something like this, HOH and HOCH3. Now generally what we do, we think about it as a meso compound and we thought that only one product is possible. But here there is no plane of symmetry, and because of that here also we will get this compound and its mirror image. So the total number of isomers obtained from this also is 2. Similarly from here also we will get 2 products. So 2 plus 2, in total we will get 4 products. So the answer of question number 21 is 4. Moving on to next question. Now we have question number 22. Now in question 22 we have CO is a pi acid ligand. Yes, it is a pi acid ligand. It donates its lone pair into vacant orbital of metal atom or ion and simultaneously accept electrons from metal into vacant anti-bonding molecular orbital. We know that it undergoes synergic bonding, that when metal atom form bond with CO, first CO donates its electrons forming a sigma bond, and after that metal donates its electron to the anti-bonding orbital of CO. So metal donates its lone pair into the anti-bonding MO. Now here what happens, that some orders regarding bond lengths of MC and CO bond is given below, where M is the central metal atom and we have to see that how many of these orders are correct. See what happens because of this synergic bonding. First we need to know that when CO donates its electrons to metal and then metal donates its electron into the anti-bonding MO, that is ABMO. Now after accepting electrons into ABMO, what will happen? That the bond order of CO decreases, and as the bond order decreases, we know that bond order is inversely proportional to bond length. So my bond length of CO increases. Similarly, when the metal is donating electrons into antibonding molecular orbital of CO, then the metal carbon bond order increases, whereas the metal carbon bond length decreases. So we have seen the effect of synergic bonding on MC bond order and bond length and CO bond order and bond length. Now let's look at the options. First option says VCO6 and VCO6 minus, the order of MC bond length. Now here in second case, that is VCO6 minus, the oxidation state of vanadium is -1 as the oxidation state of CO is 0. And because of the -1 oxidation state, it donates electrons towards CO greater than VCO6. Now VCO6 minus, metal is donating greater amount of electrons to CO. What will happen? That the MC bond order increases, and as MC bond order increases, the bond length decreases. It means VCO6 minus will have lesser MC bond length as compared to VCO6. So this statement is incorrect. Second statement says MnCO6 plus and VCO6 minus. Again, manganese is in +1 oxidation state, whereas vanadium is in -1 oxidation state. So which will donate electrons in greater amount? Obviously the one which is having greater amount of electrons. So here VCO6 minus will donate more electrons in anti-bonding MO. So because of that, now we have to compare the CO bond length. Now because of the donation by VCO6 minus, the CO bond order decreases much, and as CO bond order decreases much, I can say one thing, the CO bond length increases, but here the sign is just reversed. So again this is also incorrect. Then CO and VCO6, obvious, if there is no metal ion, CO is alone here. It means whatever be the bond order of CO, I will get corresponding bond length. But in case of VCO6, as there is some sort of electron acceptance in its anti-bonding MO, so its bond order decreases and bond length increases. So yes, CO bond length is greater in VCO6, so this statement is correct. Then NiCO4 and NiCO2 PF32. See, PF3 is a better pi acceptor than CO, and as PF3 is a better pi acceptor, I can say one thing, that if I have a complex like this, then what will happen? That PF3 accepts greater amount of electrons from nickel as compared to what CO will take, and as CO is accepting lesser electron in its anti-bonding molecular orbital, so here the bond order of CO is higher than in case of NiCO4, and as the bond order of CO is higher, bond length of CO will be lesser here. Now let's see. Here the question says that the bond length of CO is larger in NiCO2 PF3. We have seen no, the case is just reverse. So this statement is again incorrect. Now in the last case we have NiCO3 PF3 and NiCO3 PME3. Now if I ask you which is a better electron acceptor, a group which is attached with highly electronegative atom like fluorine, or the one which is attached with electron donating group like Me? Obviously the one which is attached with highly electronegative atoms. So PF3 is a better pi acceptor than PME3, and as it is a better pi acceptor, it accepts more, CO accepts less, and if CO accepts less, it has greater bond order and lesser bond length. So yes, bond length is lesser for compound having PF3 than PME3. So this is also correct. So we have seen we have only two correct options here, and answer is 2. Now after that, question number 23. Now in 23 the question is big. You can see here it looks there like that it is a lengthy question, but it is an interesting question. Now let's read it. Consider the following mechanism for the unimolecular decomposition of a molecule P. The decomposition of P takes place in the presence of inert gas Z. So here we have two equilibrium reactions, and after that there is one more reactions, and there is formation of product from P to Q, and the reaction is unimolecular in nature. And we know unimolecular reactions that if the order is 1, then it is a complex reaction, and we have seen that here the reaction is complex. The formation of product is given by the rate expression R is equals to K3P star. But P star is a intermediate, it is not my reactant or product. So I have to convert it into my reactant or products. For example, P or Q, I cannot write in this form. So if we apply steady state approximation on P star, the rate law expression becomes R is equals to K3P star, or K3 term in bracket, then the value of A square plus B plus C plus D square plus E is. Now here we have to apply the steady state approximation. Okay, let's do that. We know we apply steady state approximation on the intermediates which are formed and decompose in a very short span of time, but their concentration is almost constant during the reaction. So this is the whole concept behind my steady state approximation, and we are applying it on P star. So steady state approximation says that dP star by dt can be written as K1 P is square, that is it is forming from these P, minus K inverse P star into P. Then again it is forming from P and Z. So this is K2 P into Z minus K minus 2 P star and Z, and finally minus K3 P star. And in a steady state approximation we say that dP star by dt, whatever be the substance on which we are applying a steady state approximation, this is equal to 0. Now after that we can solve this. K1 P square plus K2 PZ is equals to K minus 1 P star P plus K minus 2 P star Z plus K3, these are plus because we have put it on the other side, K3 P star. Now taking P star as common, we are left with K minus 1 P plus K minus 2 Z plus K3 is equals to K1 P square plus K2 P Z. Now putting it on the other side, P star is equals to K1 P square plus K2 P Z divided by K minus 1 P plus K minus 2 Z plus K3, and the rate expression is rate is equals to K3 P star. So if I substitute the values, I will get K3 into K1 P square plus K2 PZ divided by K minus 1 P k minus 1z plus k3. So this is my final rate expression. Now here the question asks that the coefficients of p is a, then again p b, then coefficient of z is c, p is d, and z is e. So we have to see what are these coefficients. So here the coefficient a you can see is 2, then for b it is 1, for c it is 1, and d 1 and e 1. Only p is 2, rest all are 1. Now the question asks that what is the value of a square plus b plus c plus d square plus e. So a square is 4 plus 5 plus 6, 7, 8. So the answer of my question is 8. Yes, this question is a bit lengthy, but it is an interesting question. Now moving on to my next question, question number 24. Now question number 24 says U-238, which is a radioactive element, is started to decay, giving rise to U-38 lead-206 series. In a certain rock specimen, the ratio of moles of lead-206 to that of U-238 is found to be 0.8. Assuming that the rock originally contained no lead and only uranium was present, then the age of the rock is x into 10 to the power 9 years. Approximately find the value of x. Half-life of uranium-238 is given to us, and value of Ln 10 and log 1.8 is given. See, here in this question we have been given a radioactive element which is decomposing or decaying into another element, that is lead-206. So at time t we have been given the ratio of lead-206 and the concentration of U-238 or the amount of U-238 at that particular time. So let's solve this. Here if I say that U-238 which is initially present is A naught, and U-238 which is present at time t is At, this is initial, this is at time t, and lead which is present at time t is X, that is the product formed. We know that radioactive element follows first order kinetics. Then I can apply the formula that At is what? At is A naught e to the power minus lambda t. We know this formula, we know how this is derived. And also X, that is the concentration of product that is formed from my initial element, is X equal to A naught 1 minus e to the power minus lambda t. Now if I take the ratio X upon At, then we have e to the power 1 minus e to the power minus lambda t divided by e to the power minus lambda t, and I can write it as, now here this X is moles of lead 206 at time t, and this At represents moles of U-238 at time t, and this value is given to us, that is 0.8. So this is 0.8. 1 upon e to the power minus lambda t is basically e lambda t minus e to the power minus lambda t divided by e to the power minus lambda t is 1, or e to the power lambda t is 1 plus 0.8 is equals to 1.8. Now here we get e to the power lambda t is equals to 1.8. Now taking log on both sides we get ln lambda t is equals to ln 1.8, and we have been given value of log 1.8, and so this is lambda t is 2.3 log 1.8, and log 1.8 is 0.255. So 2.3 into 0.255, and here we have lambda t. Now lambda, how do we determine lambda for a first order reaction? We know lambda can be taken as 0.693 divided by half-life of first order kinetics reaction. And here half-life is given to us, and half-life is 2.31 into 10 to the power 9 years. 2.31 into 10 to the power 9 years. So this becomes per year. This is lambda. Substituting the value of lambda, that is 0.693 divided by 2.3 into 10 to the power 9 into t is 2.3 into 0.255. So t is 2.3 into 0.255 into 2.31 into 10 to the power 9 divided by 0.693, and when we calculate this, this comes out to be 1.95 into 10 to the power 9 years. Now here we have said that the age of rock is x into 10 to the power minus 9 year, and the value of x from the calculation I have done is 1.95. This is x. Now we need to know its approximate value, and its approximate value to the nearest integer is 2. So the answer of this question is 2. Moving on to the next question, that is question number 25. Now question number 25 says the following figures gives the plot of boiling point T of a mixture of two volatile liquids A and B versus mole fractions of A, ZA. So these are mole fractions. This can be mole fraction of liquid as well as mole fraction in the vapor phase. That's why we have written ZA. And this curve represents the boiling point, and this is for liquid, and this is vapor phase composition, and this is the temperature. Now here a new term is introduced, that is excess Gibbs free energy. What is excess Gibbs free energy? The question says that it is equal to Gibbs free energy of mixing of non-ideal solutions. That if my solution is, let's say, positive deviation or it shows negative deviation, then it is the Gibbs energy of mixing of that non-ideal solution minus Gibbs free energy of mixing of ideal solutions. Consider the following statement from the followers and identify the correct statements. Okay, let's read each of these statements. First statement says excess Gibbs free energy GE is negative for trichloromethane propanone mixture. First we need to understand that what these graphs depict. This first graph, figure 1, is a high boiling azeotrope, and we know that high boiling azeotrope basically obtained in case of negative deviation from Raoult's law. Whereas in figure 2 this is a low boiling azeotrope, and low boiling azeotrope is obtained for positive deviation from Raoult's law. Now we know this graph is for negative deviation and this is for positive deviation. Now my first question says excess Gibbs energy GE is negative. See, Gibbs energy of mixing is for non-ideal solution and mixing of ideal. See, in case of mixing of ideal solution, delta H mixing is 0, whereas entropy of mixing is positive. So in total delta G for ideal solution is delta H minus T delta S. This value is 0, this value is positive. So overall the process is spontaneous. In case of non-ideal, we know if it is negative deviation, then this delta H is negative, and this delta S, this can be either positive or somewhat negative, but in overall this is more negative than the earlier one, that is the ideal case. And if that is the case, I can say one thing, that my GE will be negative for negative deviation. And here we know trichloromethane and propanone. Trichloromethane and propanone, basically this is the case, CHCl3 and COCH3, we know in this case hydrogen bonding occurs. This is the case where hydrogen and chlorine are present on carbon and still it is showing hydrogen bonding, and because of hydrogen bonding it shows negative deviation from Raoult's law, and that's why my first statement is correct. For nitric acid water mixture, again this is the case of negative deviation. The Gibbs energy is positive, indicating that the mixture is more favorable than ideal. No, Gibbs energy of mixing should be negative, then it shows that it is more favorable than the ideal case. So this statement is incorrect. For ethanol water mixture, figure 2 is obtained. See, ethanol water mixture shows positive deviation. You can see this in your NCERTs also, that alcohol and water mixture shows positive deviation, and because of that graph 2 will be obtained. Yes, this statement is correct. And for mixtures which follows a variation of T versus ZA as figure 1, negative enthalpy of mixing, and they may have negative entropy of mixing. So this statement is also correct. So the answer of this question is A, C and D. Now moving on to my next question. Now in question number 26, we have been given an organic compound which undergoes 3 steps. First is reacts with AlCl3, forms A, then it forms B, and finally on reaction with third it forms the desired compound. For the given reaction of acid halide with alcohol yields ester as the final product. Yes, we have seen that the initial reactant that is given to us is acid halide, and finally we are getting an ester, and the reaction passes through 2 intermediates and 3 steps. The correct statement or statements is or are. The transition state with highest energy in this reaction is observed in step 2. So if I want to know that what is the highest energy transition state or how the reaction is proceeding, we need to know the mechanism. So first we will draw the mechanism of this, but before that let's read the statements. Rate expression can be written as K RCOCl, and the reaction follows first order kinetics. The 2 intermediates have less energy than the energy of first transition state in the given reaction, and in the rate determining step the intermediate formed is a acylium ion. Now let's draw the mechanism of this reaction. Now here what is happening is that when I react RCOCl with AlCl3, what will happen? The AlCl3 takes up the Cl minus and forms R dash CO plus. That is the acylium ion, which is a resonance stabilized structure. We have this resonating structure. Now after formation of this, now here there is bond breaking, and this bond breaking is basically the slowest step or the rate determining step. After that, alcohol R2OH will attack on the acylium ion, and these electrons move here, and finally we have R dash C double bond O, OR2, and here we have this H. So this is the second intermediate, and after that what will happen, that a base comes and this base basically takes this H plus, and finally we get R dash COOR2, that is our final ester. Now here these 2 steps are basically fast step, that is the approach of my alcohol to acylium ion is a fast step because that is a deficient center, and again the loss of this hydrogen is also a fast step. So I can draw its potential energy diagram somewhat like this, that initially I have my substrate, and my substrate forms a transition state of higher energy and finally forms first intermediate. Now after formation of this, the attack by alcohol on acylium is very smooth because here the crowding is less as the shape is linear. So it approaches and forms a more stable intermediate, this one, that's why the attack is happening. And finally, after loss of this H plus, we get the desired product, this one, having the lowest energy. Now this is the potential energy diagram of my compound. This is the progress of reaction, and this is energy, that is the potential energy. Now here the statements are: the transition state with highest energy in this reaction is observed in step 2. See here, the difference between energy, if I measure from either from substrate or even from the second intermediate, the energy is very less. If I calculate the energy difference, whereas in the first step the energy difference is much higher, and that's why first statement is basically an incorrect statement. Second statement says a rate expression can be written as K R dash COCl and the reaction follows first order kinetics. Yes, reaction follows first order kinetics because in first step only substrate is involved, there is no involvement of my alcohol. So I can represent my reaction in this form, and it is a reaction having order 1. Then the two intermediates have less energy than the energy of first transition state. Now the question says that the two intermediates are having less energy than the energy of first transition state. Yes, transition state is a maximum energy state, which is the most unstable state, and if I compare its energy with the intermediate energy, so yes, intermediates are having lesser energy. So yes, this statement is also correct. In the rate determining step, the intermediate formed is R dash CO. Yes, we have seen that in rate determining step acylium ion is formed. So this is also correct. So my answer for this question is B, C and D. Moving on to next question, that is question number 27. Now in question 27 we have a purple colored transition metal compound A boiled with concentrated KOH solution forms a green colored solution with the evolution of a gas C. See, with the help of color you can predict your compounds. So this question is from D block, and we know that we have a purple color compound, that is KMnO4, which on boiling with conc KOH forms a green color compound, that is K2MnO4, that is potassium manganate, with the evolution of a gas C. And what is the other gas that is obtained in addition to K2MnO4? That is O2. If you check that in this year's mains exam there is a similar question, they have asked about K2MnO4, that the gas compound obtained is paramagnetic and what is the color. So this first statement is just similar to what is asked in your JEE mains exam, but here we have more information. The green color is due to a compound B with the oxidation state of central atom as +6. So my first reaction is KMnO4 reacts with KOH, it is boiled and formed K2MnO4 along with water and a paramagnetic gas O2. Now here the green color is because of this, and this is purple. Now let's confirm this with the help of other information. The green color is due to a compound B with the oxidation state of central metal atom as +X. Compound A oxidizes Ki in alkaline medium to form a compound containing iodine. Now KMnO4, if I consider my A compound as KMnO4, it reacts with Ki and forms IO3 minus with the oxidation state +5. Compound B decomposes in pure water and forms a dark brown PPT of E. Now here I get the confirmation that K2MnO4 decomposes in pure water and forms MnO2, and MnO2 is dark brown in color. So let me write all the reactions related to the question. So first we have seen the reaction, second is the reaction of my KMnO4 with Ki, and we know in basic medium KMnO4 oxidizes iodine to IO3 minus, that is KiO3, plus we get MnO2 plus KOH. So this is the next reaction, and we have one more reaction, that is decomposition of K2MnO4, that is compound B, in water, in pure water. So it decomposes, giving MnO2, which is dark brown, plus KMnO4. So this is basically a disproportionation reaction. Mn is getting oxidized and reduced along with KOH formation. So this is the decomposition of K2MnO4. I can say it is disproportionation. Let's see the options now. Compound B is MnO2 and C is MnOH whole twice. No, C is oxygen. So this statement is incorrect. Oxidation state of iodine in compound D is +5. Now compound D is basically compound containing iodine, that is KiO3, and oxidation state of iodine here is +5. Yes, it is correct. And the value of X is 6. Now the value of X, basically it is the oxidation state of central atom of this green compound, that is K2MnO4, and yes, its oxidation state is +6. So this statement in overall is correct. Compound C is obtained when KClO3 is heated. Now KClO3 when heated, it gives KCl and O2. It is a very famous reaction. You have studied it in mole concept also. So this is the gas obtained, and here C is oxygen. So yes, this statement is also correct. Compound E is MnO2. Now compound E is a dark brown PPT, that is MnO2. So yes, this is correct. So answer is B, C and D. Next we will move on to question number 28. Now here we have the next question, question number 28. Consider the following optically active compounds. Select the correct statements. A and B has R configuration, C has S configuration, compound A has R configuration, while B and C has S. Only one of the molecule has R configuration, at least one molecule has S configuration. Now see, here we have been given 3 compounds and we have to determine their absolute configuration, that is R or S. They are numbering through CIP rules, and then we will see whether they are R or S. Now let us solve this question. So here let us talk about the first question. I have told you earlier also, what you have to do is you have to take the 2 bonds which are present in solid line in the vertical axis. For example, this in vertical and this one in vertical. And in the horizontal line, what you have to do is you have to look it in the way that the dash will remain where it is, and this CS2, CS2, NS2 will move to the other side. So we have, so just you can imagine that I am looking the compound from this direction. D will look on the right side, CS2, CS2, NS2 look on the left side, this looks above and this looks below in a Fisher projection. Now after that, what will happen? We have to provide them 1, 2, 3, 4 according to my CIP rules. So you can see from here, the first atom is carbon in all 3 cases, whereas this one is D, so it means this is 4th. Then now it is attached with a double bond. So it means if I remove this double and provide them the atoms, then it is carbon and carbon here. It means the second atom from this carbon is C, C and C. Whereas the second atom from here, this is C, C, let's say. So this is C, C, N, higher priority. Let's say it is C, C, N or C, N, N. In any of the cases, this is higher than the above one. and this one is attached with HHC. So obviously this is 1, this is 2, and this is 3. Move from 1 to 2 to 3. So 1 to 2 to 3. So this is anti-clockwise. Anti-clockwise means it should be S, but as fourth is on the horizontal line, it is R. Moving on to next one, just and look for the compound. Now if I look at this compound, then this CS2SH will look above, this compound looks below, and the CS2 looks on the side, CS2 looks on the side where it is, and H looks here. Now it is up to you that how you are looking at this compound. Now after that, this one is 1 because carbon is attached to sulfur here. Here my carbon is attached to 2 oxygen and 1 nitrogen. This is OON. This is sulfur, so sulfur will get higher priority, and here this carbon is attached with HHC. So HHC and OON, which will get higher priority? Obviously OON. So this is 1, 2, 3, and then 4. If I move from here to here, 1 to 2 to 3, then this is R, but we can see from here H is on horizontal, so this is S. Similarly for this compound, now if we look at this compound, if I draw the fissure, then what will happen? That T is where it is, just put your eye here. So T is on the left side, this looks here, and here on the top we have this carbon which is attached to another carbon which is attached with carbon. This is attached with carbon and carbon. So this is carbon, carbon and H, carbon, carbon and H. Whereas the lower one, here we have carbon, another carbon, and this carbon is attached with 2O and 1C. Now priority will be 1, and here we have only hydrogens, 1, and here also we have hydrogens, but if I remove this double bond, we get C here and C here, and we have H here. So this is CCH, whereas these are HHC. This is also HHC. So this one is 1, this is 2 because of oxygen, this is 3, and this is 4th. So this is 1, 2 and 3. This looks like R, but again this is S. It means my first compound is R and the remaining 2 are S. Now let's look at the options. First is A and B have R configuration. This is incorrect. Only A is R. A has R configuration while B and C have S. Yes, this is correct. Only one of the molecule has R configuration. Yes, only A is R. At least one molecule has S configuration. Yes, we have 2 molecules which have S configuration, and the question is saying that at least one has S. So yes, this is correct. So my correct answer is B, C and D. Moving on to next question, that is question number 29. Now question 29 says quinoline on reaction with KMNO4 and heat. Now the structure of quinoline is we have something like this, and if I oxidize it in presence of KMNO4 and heat, what will happen? That the ring which is having higher electron density will get oxidized, and among these two, if you see, these are basically 2 fused rings, and if these are oxidized by KMNO4, then the one which is electron rich, which one is electron rich, left one or right one? Obviously the right one. So it will get oxidized and we get a dicarboxylic compound. So here we get COOH and COOH. Similarly for the second compound, so this is A here. Now for the second compound, again we are oxidizing with KMNO4 in presence of H plus. Now here if we have at least one hydrogen, you all have studied it, that if this is tertiary then this will not get oxidized, but at least if I have one H, then this whole R ring will get oxidized and we get something like this. So this is my B. Now if I compare A and B, what will happen? Let's look at the options. Which of the following statements is or are incorrect? Read the question carefully regarding the major products of A and B. We have drawn the major products. Product A and B may be functional isomers. Does they look like functional? No, their molecular formula is different. Then how can be they isomers? They cannot be functional, identical, position, or any of the isomer because their molecular formula is different, and this is the first condition to look for when we are saying isomers. So A is incorrect, but this is one of the option. A and B are position, again this is incorrect, so this is one of the option. Product B and A are identical. How they are identical? They are completely different, but we are looking for incorrect option, so this is the incorrect option. And finally, product A contains 2 carboxylic group and a heterocyclic ring. Now product A contains 2 carboxylic, yes, this is correct, and a heterocyclic ring means the ring contains any other atom than carbon. Yes, it contains nitrogen. So this is a correct statement, but this must not be included in my answer. So my answer is A, B and C. These 3 are the incorrect options and I have to look for that. Then the next question is question number 30. Question number 30 is basically from thermodynamics, and now this is a theoretical question. Sometimes students find difficulty solving theoretical questions more than the numerical questions. Let's see what these statements say. Read the following statements carefully. Select the correct statement or statements among the following. Einstein's special relativity equation E is equals to mc square validates the law of conservation of energy. That is the first law of thermodynamics. Yes, this is correct. That here mass is converting into energy, but the total energy of my system and surrounding remains conserved. So yes, Einstein's special relativity equation validates the law of conservation of energy. Second statement says the state function del u by del v at constant t has dimensions of entropy and is sometimes called internal entropy. No, if you have studied first law of thermodynamics, then you get this expression and you know that del u by del v has dimensions of pressure, not entropy, and it is called internal pressure. So this statement here is incorrect. The third statement says the temperature dependence of the reaction enthalpy is given by Kirchhoff's law, which is delta R H naught T2 is equals to delta R H naught T1 plus integral T1 to T2 delta R CV naught dt. See, there is a high possibility that you mark this question as correct, but here we have CV and we know in Kirchhoff equation we have Cp, not CV. So the equation is delta HR naught T2 minus delta HR naught T1 is equals to T1 to T2 delta R Cp naught dt. And because of that, this statement becomes incorrect. Last statement says in an isolated system the entropy cannot decrease when a spontaneous change occurs. Yes, when a spontaneous change occurs in an isolated system. For reversible it remains 0, and for irreversible we have seen when spontaneous changes are occurring entropy increases, which shows my second law of thermodynamics. So from second law we got this statement, and so this statement is a correct statement. So the correct answer here is A and D. Now the multiple correct questions are done. Next we will move on to numerical type questions. Now we have numerical type questions, and now the question is 31. Consider the above electrochemical cell at 298 Kelvin. So here one electrochemical cell has been given to us, and we have been given so much information. In the given cell, half cell 1 contains formic acid having concentration 0.1 molar, and half cell 2 contains 0.01 molar Ag plus. The electrochemical potential of the above cell is x volt. So initially, whatever the conditions are provided, first we have to calculate its electrochemical potential. After that, after some time, 1 liter of 0.05 molar NaOH is added in container 1 and 3.725 gram of KCl is added in compartment 2, and all Ag plus deposited in the form of AgCl on the silver electrode, and rest Cl minus remains in solution. So we have converted a simple metal ion electrode to metal insoluble salt anion electrode. And then the new electrochemical potential of the cell, and here in the compartment 1 we have prepared a buffer solution. We will see that is it a buffer or a hydrolysis concept, okay, according to the concentrations provided to us. And from these two cells we have to see the potential of this cell, and now we have to do the calculation, that is x minus y into 10. So we will start from the very beginning. First we will calculate the value of x. For that we have been given that we have formic acid which is 2 liter and 0.1 molar. So in compartment 1 we have formic acid which dissociates as formate ion and H plus, and its concentration that is given to us is 2 liter 0.1 molar. 2 liter and 0.1 molar. Now the concentration of H plus, if I want to calculate, first I have to calculate alpha for this reaction, because formic acid is a weak acid. And if I want to know the equilibrium between my H2 and H plus, in which the transfer of electrons is taking place, and for that we have to calculate this H plus, and for H plus we need to calculate alpha. So alpha is under root Ka divided by C. Now the value of Ka of formic acid is 10 to the power minus 5 divided by concentration, that is 0.1. So this value is 10 to the power minus 2. Yes, alpha is very less. It means I can directly calculate H plus from here, that is C alpha. C is 0.1, this is 10 to the power minus 2. So H plus is 10 to the power minus 3. Now in the compartment 2, we have Ag plus accepts electron and form Ag. This is my cell reaction for compartment 2. Now the concentration of Ag plus that is given to us is 3 liter 0.01 molar. 3 liter of 0.01 molar, and also the pressure of H2 in compartment 1 is 1 atm. I can write the cell reaction as half H2, because in the left compartment oxidation will take place. So half H2 gives H plus plus electron. This is aqueous. Now if I want to calculate its electrochemical cell, we can write E cell as E naught cell. What is E naught cell? Oxidation potential of anode. We know oxidation potential of anode is 0, because that is standard hydrogen electrode. So this is 0 plus standard reduction potential of silver electrode. Now the standard reduction potential of silver is, that is given to us, 0.8 volt. So this is 0.8 minus RT by F, and we have been given the value of 2.303 RT by F, that is 0.06. So this is 0.06 divided by, see, this is my anode half cell and this is my cathode half cell. And from this, the net equation is half H2 gaseous plus Ag plus aqueous gives Ag solid plus H plus aqueous. So I can write it as 0.06 divided by 1, that is the transfer of electrons, log concentration of H plus divided by pressure of H2 to the power half. This is 1, so 1 to the power half is 1, and concentration of Ag plus. Now this is 0.8 minus 0.06 concentration of H plus, from here is 10 to the power minus 3 divided by concentration of Ag plus, that is 10 to the power minus 2, which becomes 10 to the power minus 1. It comes here as minus 1 and becomes plus. So from here I will get X equal to 0.86, because this E cell is nothing but X. So my first part is done, that is calculation of X. Now the second part is, if I add NaOH to the first solution. So here, if I add 1 liter of 0.05 molar NaOH, what will happen? I am adding OH minus equal to 1 into 0.05, that is 0.05 moles, and initially the value, initially you see we have a formic acid which reacts with NaOH, sodium formate plus water. This is basically a neutralization reaction. Now here HCOH is 0.2, this is 0.05. Now if reaction happens, this is limiting, this will be completely exhausted and we are left with 0.15 moles of formic acid, and we will get 0.05 moles of formate. Now we have formic acid, a weak acid, and its salt. This is what? This is basically a buffer. And what is the way to calculate pH of a buffer? pH of a buffer is pH is equal to pKa plus log concentration of salt upon concentration of that acid. Now here Ka of formic acid is 10 to the power minus 5, so its pKa is 5 plus log concentration of salt is 0.05 and this is 0.15, and this becomes 5 plus log 1 by 3 or 5 minus log 3, which becomes, the value of log 3 is 0.5. So from there I will get, this is 5 minus 0.5 is equals to 4.5. Now we have concentration of H plus from here, because I know the pH. pH is 4.5, so I can say concentration of H plus is 3 into 10 to the power minus 5. Okay, this part is done. Second part is, we have made a metal ion electrode into metal insoluble salt, and we know to calculate the E cell of my second compartment, I can write my E cathode as E naught Cl minus AgCl Ag minus 0.06 log concentration of chloride ion, because here what we are doing, now what we are doing here is we are adding KCl, and how much KCl? 3.725 gram. What is the number of moles? This is 3.725 divided by molar mass of KCl. K is 39, Cl is 35.5, so this is 74.5, and this value comes out to be 0.05. Clear? So we have 0.05 moles of KCl and we have added this. Now if chloride is getting added, Cl minus precipitate your Ag plus and forms AgCl. Initially the amount of Ag plus is 0.03 moles. We can see from here we have 0.01 molar and 3 liter. So if I will add 0.05 moles of Cl minus, what will happen? Very easy, that my KCl reacts with Ag plus and forms AgCl. This is 0.03, this is 0.05. This will get exhausted. The amount that is remained is 0.02 moles. In what? In 3 liters. So the concentration of Cl minus in solution is 0.02 divided by 3. Now see what is the next part. Now we have to calculate the new electrochemical potential. So first is we will calculate E cathode. E cathode, I have written the formula E naught Cl minus AgCl Ag minus 0.06 log chloride ion. Now E naught AgCl Ag can be calculated as E naught Ag plus 2 Ag plus 0.06 log Ksp minus 0.06 log concentration of chloride, that is 0.02 divided by 3. Now here this is 0.8, this is 0.06 log Ksp is 10 to the power minus 10, this is given to us, minus 0.06 log 0.02 divided by 3, and finally when we calculate this, this comes out to be 0.332. Now this is 0.332. And what about E of anode? E of anode is 0 minus 0.06 divided by 1 log concentration of H plus. And we have seen minus log of concentration of H plus is what? This is pH, and the value of pH we know this is 4.5, so 0.06 into 4.5 is 6.5 is 30, so this becomes 0.27. So this is 0.27, this is 0.332, so this is 0.27 plus 0.332, and we get it as Y is 0.602 volt. Y is 0.602, X is 0.86, and when you do the subtraction we will get 0.258. But here in the answer what we require? We require the value X minus Y into 10. So that is 2.58. I know this question is very lengthy, but you can see you can learn many things from this question. Now moving on to my next question, and that is this one, question number 32. Question number 32 says, consider the given reaction H2 plus half O2 gives H2O liquid. The standard enthalpy of formation of H2O liquid is minus 286 kilojoule per mole. So delta H of formation of water is minus 286 kilojoule per mole, and entropy of H2, standard entropy of H2 is 130 joule per Kelvin per mole, of water is 68 joule per Kelvin per mole, and that of oxygen is 196 joule per Kelvin per mole. Now from here what we can do? We can calculate delta S of formation of water. What is this? That the entropy of water, which is 68, minus entropy of H2, which is 130, minus half of entropy of standard entropy of oxygen, that is 196, and from there we get minus 160 joule per Kelvin per mole. So this is minus 160 joule per Kelvin per mole. Delta H is minus 286 kilojoule per mole. Now if all the Gibbs energy of the combustion of H2 is used in the electrolysis of sodium ethanoate in the cold electrolytic cell. Now here we have combined physical with organic. Under standard conditions, the Gibbs free energy of combustion of 1 mole of H2 is utilized in production of 2 moles of ethane. The standard electrochemical potential of the cold electrolytic cell is X volt. The value of X is. This is very beautiful question. You have combined 2-3 concepts. Here we have thermodynamics, we have some sort of electrochemistry, and you have your organic, that is Kolb's electrolytic method. Now in Kolb's electrolytic, what we have is, here we are doing electrolysis of sodium ethanoate, that is CS3COO minus, and on electrolysis it loses electrons and forms CS3COO radical. Now something like this happens, your CO2 leaves and you get CH3 radical, and 2 CH3 radical combines and forms C2H6. So I can see from here that if I want 1 mole of C2H6, the amount of electrons that is needed is 2 mole of electrons. But here the question says that if all the Gibbs energy of the combustion of H2, so first I have to calculate the Gibbs energy of the formation of water, and that is delta G is delta H minus T delta S. What is delta H? Delta H is given to us, that is minus 286 kilojoule, that is minus 286 minus 298 into delta S, and delta S is minus 160, but this value is in joule, we want this in kilojoule, divided by 1000, and this comes out to be minus 238.32 kilojoule per mole. Now we have calculated delta G. We know 1 mole of C2H6 require 2 mole of electrons. Now the question says, under standard conditions, the Gibbs energy of combustion of 1 mole of H2, we have seen the energy, is utilized in production of 2 moles of ethane. 2 moles means we require 4 moles of electrons. The standard electrochemical potential of the Kolb's electrolytic cell is X volt. The value of X is, okay, we have to apply a simple formula, the total energy obtained from the combustion of 1 mole of H2, that is minus 238.32 kilojoule, or I can write it as minus 238,320 joule is equal to, let's take it as positive because we are comparing the energies, 4 mole electrons, so 4 into 96500 into E naught, and when we calculated E naught from this calculation we get 0.62 volt. So my answer for this question is 0.62 volt. Next we will move on to question number 33. Now in question number 33, what we have is, consider the following reaction, and we have been given a compound with different reagents. So this is a sequence reaction. If X is the number of oxygen atoms in compound A, Y is the number of degree of unsaturation in compound B, and Z is the number of carbon atoms in the cyclic ring of compound C, then the value of X plus Y plus 4Z. Now here what we have is, we have cyclohexanone and I am reacting it with NaNO2 and HCl. Now NaNO2 and HCl forms HNO2, and we know that from this HNO2 what we get is NO plus compound. Now this NO plus basically attacks on this ring, but before that what will happen is, in presence of acidic medium this becomes OH plus, and now it undergoes enolization. Now if enolization will happen, we get something like this, and now it reacts with NO plus and these electrons move here. Now after that what will happen, we get OH plus and here we have NO. Now base takes this H plus and we are left with a double bonded oxygen and NO. Now if you see here that this NO can undergo tautomerization as we have this alpha hydrogen. So here tautomerization will happen and we will get double bond O, double bond NOH, that is oxime. Now oxime, this will be my compound A. Now after that it shows that we do the hydrolysis. Now oxime on hydrolysis forms a carbonyl group. So basically when A undergoes hydrolysis in acidic medium, we get a diketone, that is alpha diketone. Here you can see that first H plus will be taken by this OH that leaves, and finally we get this 1,2 diketone. Now after formation of this diketone, that is my B, which is this one, and A is a double bond NOH, that is oxime. Now B reacts with OH minus base followed by H plus. Now we know when we have 1,2 diketone and we provide basic medium, this is benzylic acid rearrangement. Here what will happen, that this OH minus attacks here, these electrons move here and we get double bond O minus OH. Now these electrons move here and these migrate here and we get a 5-membered ring, and to this what we have one OH group here because these electrons move here then, and we have COO minus because initially this O minus will form and this is COH, but after that proton transfer will take place because this carboxylic is more acidic, and finally we get something like this. And when I provide H plus, then we get OH, COO, H, and this is C. Now question asks, if X is the number of atoms in compound A contains 2 oxygen atoms, that is the value of X. Y is the number of degree of unsaturation in compound B. Now B is this one which have 2 double bonds on oxygen and this ring. So in total we have 3 dBe for B. And finally Z is the number of carbon atoms in cyclic ring of compound C. Now cyclic ring of compound C is a 5-membered ring. So my Z is 5. Now the question says what is the value of X plus Y plus 4Z. So 4Z is 4 into 5, that is 20, plus 3 23 plus 2 25. So the answer of this question is 25. Moving on to next question. Boron mainly occurs in the allotropic form in which it forms B12 icosahedron. See, JEE has asked such questions in previous year also. It gives a name and asks questions about it. That's why we have a similar question here, that boron forms a B12 icosahedron, so that you will get the structure of this compound. This structure have 5-fold rotation symmetry at the individual boron atoms. If X is the number of vertices of icosahedron, Y is the number of triangular faces, and Z is the number of edges in the icosahedron, then what is the value of X plus Y plus Z? Now first thing is to draw the structure. So first thing is draw a pentagon. draw one more pentagon like this. Now here we have B, here we have B. Now this B is joined to all these boron atoms. These corners are basically boron atoms. And similarly, these are again joined with boron atoms. So we have a structure like this. Okay. So this is the structure, and finally this boron is attached to all the atoms. Now I know this is difficult to look in a three-dimensional structure, but imagine a pentagon. Imagine a pentagon which is just rotated, and then you have one boron above and one boron below. Now if you see, the question says X is the number of vertices of icosahedron. Now in this icosahedron structure, that is a pentagon here, a pentagon here, and a boron here, boron here. So each atom, this is boron and this is the vertices of this structure. So I can say the total vertices is 12. Total 20 triangular faces. So my value of y is 20, the value of x is 12. Then we have z is the number of edges in the icosahedron. Z is 30. Now the question says what is the value of x plus y plus z by 2. This is 12 plus 20, 32, 32 plus 30, 62, and we know 62 divided by 2 is what? 31. So my answer is 31. Now moving on to the next question, that is question number 35. Now in question 35 we can see we have certain organic structures, and the question says consider the following organic compounds. X is the number of compounds which give positive bicarbonate test. Y is the number of compounds having higher Ka, it means they are more acidic than benzoic acid, then the value of X upon Y is. See, for bicarbonate test we have to look for H2CO3. The pKa of H2CO3 lies somewhere around 6.3 to 6.4. So if my compound is having lower pKa than carbonic acid, I can say one thing, that it gives positive bicarbonate test, that if I have acid like carboxylic acid and I have bicarbonate, it reacts with this and forms CH3COO minus Na plus and form H2CO3, which is unstable, and gives H2O plus CO2, that is brisk effervescence, and that is the whole bicarbonate test. So for this bicarbonate test we need a compound which is having lower pKa than 6.4, and we know that all carboxylic acids have their pK values around 3, 4, 5. So yes, they are having lower pK than by H2CO3, it means they give bicarbonate test. And phenols, they cannot give unless I put very strong electron withdrawing groups at ortho or para positions. Sulfonic acid, yes, sulfonic acids are even more acidic than carboxylic because of greater number of equal RS. So sulfonic acids also give bicarbonate test. Now let's look at our compounds. So first is the compounds which give positive bicarbonate test. In A we have ortho methyl benzoic acid. So here we have benzoic acid on which ortho effect is also taking place. So it is even more acidic than benzoic. So yes, this gives bicarbonate test. Now this is the derivative of phenol. Here methyl decreases the acidic strength of phenol, and we know that phenol is not able to give bicarbonate test. So then we have a benzene sulfonic acid. As I have told you, sulfonic acids can give bicarbonate test, they are more acidic than carboxylic. Then These are the acidic hydrogen, but their pK value is higher than my carbonic. So they will not give bicarbonate test. Sulfonic, yes, it will give. Carboxylic, give. This can give bicarbonate, but again, phenol is having pK value of 10, and if I put NO2 to this, then pK is around 7.2 to 7.3, but it is above that, so it is not able to give bicarbonate test. So X is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The next is Y is the number of compounds have higher Ka than benzoic acid. It means how many compounds are more acidic than benzoic acid. So first is more acidic. Why? Ortho effect. 1. Second, it is derivative of phenol, so it is not more acidic. Sulfonic, yes, sulfonic acid are stronger acids than carboxylic. So A, C. Then D is not the option. Sulfonic, yes, sulfonic acid are stronger. Aliphatic acids are basically weaker than benzoic acid, but there is one aliphatic acid which is stronger than benzoic acid, and that is formic acid. So yes, formic acid is having higher Ka than benzoic, and again this is from phenol, and if we put one NO2, then it is not more acidic than benzoic. So from here we get 4. So Y is 4. Now they want the value of X upon Y, that is 5 by 4, which is 1.25. The answer of my question is 1.25. Next we will move on to the last question of this paper. Question says a 15 gram sample of charcoal, density of charcoal sample is given, which is 1.5 gram per cc, was brought in contact with a gas which is contained in a 1 liter vessel at a temperature of 27 degrees Celsius, or we can say 300 Kelvin. Initially the pressure of gas was found to be 700 mm of Hg, which drops to 400 mm of Hg after coming in contact with charcoal. It means charcoal is absorbing this gas. Then the volume of gas, if taken at 400 Kelvin and 2 atm pressure, that is absorbed per gram of the adsorbent, and here my adsorbent is charcoal, is X ml per gram, then the value of X by 6 is. Now here if you read the whole language, then the question looks a bit tricky, lengthy, but you have to solve each and every part one by one, then the question will get easy. Now let's start doing the question. So here initially we have been given 15 gram of charcoal and the density is given as 1.5 gram per cc. Now we have mass, we have density, and I can say one thing, that the volume here is mass upon density, that is 10 ml or 10 cc. Now here volume of container that has been given to us is 1000 ml, but when charcoal has been introduced, then this volume decreases. So the new volume is 1000 minus 10, or we can say 990 ml. Okay. Now here we have been given that initially the pressure of gas was found to be 700 mm of Hg and it drops to 400 mm of Hg. Now let's assume that what will be the volume if we have 400 mm Hg pressure and there will be no adsorption. Then I can say one thing, that we can apply P1 into V1 there, that PV is equals to constant because the temperature is constant here. So initially the pressure is 700 and the volume is 1000 ml, but finally the pressure becomes 400, and let's say the volume that is required for this 400 mmHg pressure is V is equals to 700 into 1000 divided by 400, and that is, this value is 1750 ml. But what is the effective volume that is absorbed by charcoal? The effective volume that is absorbed by charcoal is volume of gas that is absorbed is basically 1750 minus what volume I have currently, that is 990 ml. So if I subtract these two, I will get 760 ml. It means 760 ml volume has been absorbed. But per gram, what is the quantity that is absorbed? That per gram, the volume absorbed is per gram is 760 divided by 15, because the total mass of charcoal that is given to me is 15. So this value is, this is 5 times 3 is 15, this is 152, so 152 by 3 ml. This is the volume which is absorbed per gram of charcoal. Now after that, we have to see this volume in a different condition. It means when the pressure and temperature are different. So here in the question, we have been asked the volume absorbed per gram at 400 Kelvin and 2 atm pressure. So we can apply P1 V1 upon T1 is equal to P2 V2 upon T2. Initially, my pressure was 400. The volume that is absorbed is 152 divided by 3, and the temperature was 300 Kelvin. But now the pressure is 2 atm, and 2 atm is 760 into 2, that is 1520. So 1520 into volume, that is V2 divided by temperature, and temperature now is 400 Kelvin. So here we have 400, and when we calculate this, my V2 is something around 17.6 or 7. Okay. But here the question has been asked that what is the value of x by 6? Now this value that we obtained is x, that is 17 point something. But if I divide it by 6, we know that either we have 17 or 18, but if I divide it by 6, then the nearest integer will be only 3. So it does not matter, you do not have to do the exact calculation for that question. So if you know that the starting terms are 17, then you can easily predict that your nearest integer is 3. So the answer of this question is 3. So our paper is done. I think you all have scored good in these paper 1 and paper 2, and just all the best for your future exam, that is JEE Advanced. Thank you and goodbye.